Two Parkinson a Pod is powered by Parkinson's UK, the charity that's here to support every Parkinson's journey every step of the way. Wherever you're from, whatever you need, visit parkinsons.org.uk for more information. The birds are singing. It's a beautiful day. Hi there, spring has sprung here in the UK. The daffodils have sprouted in the garden. The trees are laden with cherry blossom. Hopefully you're feeling perky-parky today. Let's find out if Kuhan's feeling perky.
Perky-parky,
How
yes.
are you feeling?
I'm actually feeling bizarrely quite well this morning after a very good night's sleep, which is the topic of our podcast today, actually. But I did also almost get run over on the way here as well.
Oh dear.
So,
what happened?
Cyclists.
Were you looking at your phone?
No, I wasn't, but everyone else was. But no, this was a cyclist incident. I don't want to get into the whole London cycling, anti-cycling thing, but which part of a red light do cyclists think that doesn't apply to them?
Oh, here we go.
I've turned into an old man, haven't I? But honestly, when I was a bit shaky coming this morning and I was a bit sort of not steady on my feet, when you don't have those quick reactions that we used to have when we were nimble, so you're a bit more aware of these things, aren't you? You can dodge things when you're fit and able and young, but when you're the opposite of that, like us, it's you're a bit more aware of it. And it took me by, gave me a little fright, shall we say?
Well, it's funny because not funny, but I nearly got hit by a bus the other day as well. I was the traffic lights.
Yeah,
on the corner down here.
Was it turning around the corner?
Yeah, it was
sharp corner, isn't it? Yeah.
So I thought it was all clear.
Yeah.
And I start to go, and when I start to go, I have to go, you know.
Yes.
I start running, I start moving, and I can't stop, so...
Fascination.
Yeah, I almost ran in front of a bus, which... So as I'm going over, you go, ooh.
Yeah, the bus drivers take the corner very tightly, and they almost mount the pavement. Yeah. We do really sound like two old men here, don't we? Yeah. But just one thing about cyclists... Those electric bikes now, they're just like motorbikes, aren't they?
Too quick.
Those Deliveroo drivers, they're just riding on the pavement with a motorbike, practically.
Yeah. There's a path across the park over here, and, you know, you're walking along with the dog weather, and they zap along too fast. Yeah,
you're not meant to cycle along that path as well. So.
I'm a big cyclist myself. I used to cycle loads, but I'm not a fan of those electric bikes going so fast.
You were a cyclist, but you're not anymore.
No, because I ran into a van.
Yes, well, it was slightly more dramatic than even that, actually.
Yeah, my head went through his passenger window. Yeah, it wasn't too clever. Yeah, I had to have plastic surgery on my chin and broke my collarbone and nightmare.
You got some metal in you as a result, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got a metal shoulder because of it, a ring when I go through airport departure lounges.
Right. And since then you haven't been back on a cycle, right?
No, I haven't, no. I've sold my bike.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of cycling, electric bikes, but in the countryside and away from traffic and stuff.
I'm thinking about a static bike. Exercise
like
bike.
What's that?
Peloton.
Not
Peloton, because you have
They're
to
very
pay
expensive,
40 quid a month to get the class.
I think isn't it like 2-3 grand up front as well?
Ridiculous, yeah.
A lot of money. But you can get one of these cheap things from Argos, right? Like for 100 quid, can't you?
I love Argos, I'll be down there like a shot. Have a look through the Argos catalogue, go to TK Maxx, have a rummage and then go to Argos. It's my perfect day.
Face is just lit up here.
My perfect day.
But is that the sort of thing you mean? One of those cheap, cheerful thing, put it in... Where are you going to put it?
Probably in the kids' bedroom, because they're not here anymore. So.
Yeah, they're not here, are they?
No.
They've left, haven't they, Dave?
Yeah, one's at uni and the other's in Brazil.
Right, they've grown up.
Amazon, yeah.
They've grown up.
Yeah.
Kids have grown up, but Dave hasn't, thankfully. What else has been going on, Dave?
We spoke at a Parkinson's UK get-together the other day. It was fantastic. They had every single member of staff from Parkinson's UK in one building.
600 or so, right?
Yeah. Some of them hadn't met each other. They'd only met sort of top half of themselves through Zoom.
Excuse me?
Through Zoom.
Oh, I see, online, yeah.
They hadn't seen the bottom half of people.
Most of them are based at home.
Yeah. So people from the helpline, everything. Amazing.
Yeah. Area managers, helpline staff, everybody. It was quite an event, and we are now part of the Parkinson's family, and they made us feel part of the family.
Yeah, it made us feel very welcome. Well, lots of selfies after our talk, so it must have gone down quite well. Or they want to make sure they recognise we won't avoid us forever. Yeah,
it was very warm feeling. It was Dave and I had sort of opened the day with a fun little quiz, didn't we? A kind of get to know Parkinson's and get to know us type of quiz. Well, maybe we'll play a little bit on the air from that morning, because it was a good way to sort of inform but entertain as well.
We told our Parkinson's stories through a quiz, 6 questions in the quiz, And then we talked around each question about what it meant to us and how D-Day and things like that.
Yeah,
Diagnosis day.
You got quite emotional when talking about your diagnosis, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really want to talk about it now, but
No, I got emotional at the same point. I think
about your mum and dad, weren't you?
Yeah, and you were talking about your dad as well.
Yeah.
It's always, We are going to be talking about D-Day a little bit later in the show as well, about coming out. And we might have a dedicated episode on coming out because it continues to be a big theme. But it was a good day. Felt the love in the room. They're doing some great work. Really lovely people there. Lots of new people as well. And it was a good feeling. I have to say, Dave, I was absolutely shattered afterwards. And the next day, I was just spent at home, like on the bed, basically. Yeah. Because I was just completely wiped out.
You don't realise how much these things take out of you. It's amazing how exhausted you are. I slept a lot yesterday.
Yeah. I called Dave in the afternoon, and he picked up the phone. He goes, "It's 1:45." What do you mean it's 1:45? It's 1:45. Okay. He goes, assuming that I would know what that means. Tell the listeners what that means.
It's my nap time.
It's your nap time. You have a regular nap time.
20 to 2 till 2 o'clock, yeah.
20 to 2 to 2. Why so precise? Is that a routine thing?
Because my meds are running out, so it's a good time.
Right.
I take my meds at 2, 8, 11 and 2, so I'm 5.
Yeah.
So lie down, have a bit of a kip, and then wake up a bit recharged, and then take my meds, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Fine, I'm still got a chronic degenerative neurology condition, but
but you feel refreshed. Yeah. I've started to get into napping. It doesn't come naturally for me. We are going to talk about napping in a minute, but just before we do, what else has been going on, Dave?
Oh, we had a great game of pool with Ellie.
We did. I was just doing a pool action to cue Dave. To cue Dave. There you go. I was cueing you with a cue action. Hey.
Yeah, the lovely Ellie.
Yes.
Finch, who had been to UCL to get a DBS sorted out.
DBS checkup, yeah. She was a bit down.
So we made her feel a little more down.
Yes.
Plied her with beer and made her play pool with us.
Yes, we didn't ply her with beer. But we did have a beer, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Went to a brewery. We can organise a bit of the brewery, yeah.
Yes. But more importantly, we actually had a fun game of pool. And I've got to say, you both played very well. So I was watching you two play. And both Ellie and yourself, your symptoms sort of just disappear when you've got a cue in your hand and you're on the table. You were on good form that day. And I think Ellie probably noticed the impact as well of just having a bit of fun and doing something competitive. At one point, we all had tremors. We were outside. It was quite a nice day, but it was a bit chilly. And the lady came out and said,
"Do you want the heater on?"
We
thought we were all shaking because of the cold.
Yes. Not the first time, not the last time that had happened, but it was a fun afternoon, really fun afternoon, and it lifted my spirits. Hopefully it lifted Ellie's spirits. And you were on good form that day, weren't you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Really good. You feel very relaxed when you're with fellow Parkinsons.
You do. You don't have to be embarrassed, do you?
You don't need to talk to each other really in depth about Parkinson's. You just know what's going on. If people are a bit off, you know they're off, and you don't have to explain anything. It's a little bit relaxing when you're with a group of Parkinsons.
Yeah, I mean, like, even now, socially, when I'm out with non-Parkies, I try to hide, conceal, mask my symptoms. Maybe not in the same way, same depth I did before, because I can't, quite frankly. But it's still tiring, right? When you can completely be yourself, it's so much more relaxing. And I noticed that, I was late taking my meds and didn't really notice. I was going off, but I didn't really notice. And I love playing pool. I really love playing pool.
Even though you got beaten by me.
I think I evened it up at the end.
No.
I think I even...
Yeah, in your dreams.
Yeah. But it was good fun. Tell me
about this good night's sleep you had.
Well, it's partly because I was so exhausted from that day at Parkinson's UK. And I do believe, actually, being active helps with things like fatigue and sleep. Being physically and mentally active, I think, really does help with sleep. It sounds counterintuitive, but the more active I am, the more energy I have, and the better I sleep. It was the first night in years that I didn't wake up to pee.
All right.
Which I thought was quite remarkable. And I can't explain why. Maybe I didn't drink so much yesterday evening. Didn't do anything especially different yesterday. I did have a nap during the day for about 20 minutes. Didn't intend to, but I was so exhausted, my eyes just closed. And I feel like a new man this morning. I really feel like it's amazing the power of a good night's sleep. It's so rare, but it's just like medicine, isn't it, for us? And I felt good. I can't put my finger on it. Wish I could, but I'm just going to take it for what it is and enjoy the day.
I call getting good night's sleep is the Swiss Army knife to life. You can do anything with it.
To Parky life, particularly, right?
Fix anything, so...
Yeah.
It's a great thing when you get a good night's sleep. We've got a sleep expert on today's show.
Come on, we're dancing around sleep. Let's talk about sleep proper as a topic, and let's hear from our expert.
Yeah, she's Jane Alty, Professor of Neurology at University of Tasmania in Australia. She's a research educator, Cambridge graduate, one of the most qualified neurologists around, and she's an expert in Parky sleep problems as well. So without further ado, let's head down under and get Bryce some brains.
Do an accent. Do your Aussie accent, Dave.
No, she's not Aussie, is she?
Oh, she's not Aussie. She's from your part of the world, isn't she?
No, she's from Lancashire.
That's where you're from, isn't it?
Get away. One of the brightest brains of the Parky world.
Yes.
Jane Alty.
Here we go.
Professor Jane Alty, welcome to Two Parkies in a Pod.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
Welcome.
I want to know how a lass from Preston ended up in Tasmania.
Well, there's a good question. Well, yeah, I grew up in Preston and went to school in Preston, then went down to Cambridge for university, and then mostly I worked in Leeds, actually. My dad wasn't very happy being a proud Lancastrian. That was in Yorkshire. And I was a consultant there for about 15 years. Then I moved to Tassie about 6 years ago, and I've been working here ever since. So that's my funny route around the country and across the world.
Did you see Dave's eyes light up when you said Leeds?
I did, actually.
He's a proud Leedsman, aren't you, Dave?
Big time. Yorkshire through and through, yeah.
Oh, okay.
White Rose County.
Yeah, I miss that accent, actually. The thing is, being a Lancastrian, when I was in Yorkshire, they said, oh, you're not from round here. And yet, when I'm here, people say, oh, you're not from round here. So wherever I go, I don't really fit in.
You haven't picked up the accent, have you, at all?
No, I don't think so. But when I come back to the UK, I can hear my accent's changed a little bit. I've started to do that Australian thing where you slightly go up at the end of a sentence. And it is quite hard not to. So I picked that up a little bit. And all three of my kids now sound really Australian.
We do have a lot of Australian listeners, and they're all very welcome. And you're a professor of neurology and a movement disorder specialist, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So when I was in Leeds and Yorkshire, I trained in movement disorders and particularly specialised in Parkinson's disease. And when I came out to Melbourne, it was for a movement disorders fellowship. So I worked for 6 months in Monash Medical Centre, and I was undertaking research and clinical work and really just refining my skills, if you will, to diagnose and manage Parkinson's. And then when I went back to Yorkshire at the University of York, I undertook a doctorate degree for 2 years where I did lots of research into Parkinson's. And one of the areas I was particularly interested in was, can we better measure the motor signs of Parkinson's? So rather than us doctors looking at somebody's finger tap and say, that looks a bit slow, could we actually use computer science to measure that more precisely? So it's kind of a crossover really with bioengineering and trying to develop better monitoring tools.
I've seen some of that stuff. It's real tech innovation there. You know, it removes subjectivity from it, right? And hands it over to technology.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't want to do myself out of a job as a doctor, and I don't think technology will replace doctors, but I think it can really augment the examination so that we've got that degree of precision to look at as well as our human interpretation. So yeah, I think I could see these tools coming in and becoming more mainstream. I don't think we're quite there yet. But the other area, of course, is people living with Parkinson's say, well, I would like to measure my own symptoms and signs at home a bit more.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of home monitoring device is another area that we could see that in, really.
Do you think AI might eventually find a cure for Parkinson's?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think it could help. And the reason that I say that is that I think as humans, we're limited by what we know. And that knowledge constraint often sends us down a certain route to research that area more. And I think the beauty of AI is that it can come in really unbiased. And it doesn't know what Parkinson's looks like. So it can look at a complex problem like Parkinson's and variation between people and so on. And it can really start to spot patterns. So I think in that clinical aspect, it could see certain patterns in Parkinson's that us humans don't see or we don't look for. But it might also be that certain subtypes of Parkinson's respond in a better way to certain treatments. And I think that's where AI is amazing. You know, it can look at these huge data sets and crunch through all of those pattern recognition algorithms, really. So will it find a cure? Oh, gosh, I hope so. Put it this way, I think it's going to help move us towards that.
Good. But whether it's AI, technology, or some other means, any source of a cure is most welcome.
Exactly.
We might come back to technology a bit later in this chat, but we asked John to talk about sleep. Do you want to give us the dummies version of sleep and Parkinson's? And I have trouble with my sleep, and we can discuss that, and so does Dave. And almost universally, everybody we know with Parkinson's, which is quite a fair number now, have got some sort of sleep issue, often more than one sleep issue. What is it about us, Parkies? Why is sleep so challenging for us?
Oh, these are good questions, but you're absolutely right. Sleep problems in Parkinson's are so common, aren't they? And I see that as a doctor. I spend so many of my clinic consultations talking to people about sleep. And I think there are different issues with sleep and Parkinson's. So not everybody will have the same sorts of issues. But I think a very common issue would be insomnia. And that can be initiation insomnia, actually trouble getting to sleep, or maintenance insomnia, problem staying asleep. And research tells us probably a good 50% of people with Parkinson's will have one of those types of insomnia. You're saying you, Kuhan, yeah.
Yeah, I woke up at 4:20 this morning, and that's not unusual.
Yeah, and it's awful, isn't it? Because then when you wake up, it's often really hard to get back to sleep. And how do you do that, really? And then you're exhausted the next day. And that brings me nicely onto the other really common problem, which is excessive daytime sleepiness. The statistics would say probably 1 in 3 people with Parkinson's will have this, where they just persistently feel pretty more. You don't agree with the stats?
Oh, what do you think, Dave? I mean, you have daytime
I think
sleepiness.
more. It was weird because I went to a dinner the other day with a few Parkies, and you could see that the heads dropping, halfway through. It wasn't my conversation. It was just they were just tired, and the heads go and the eyes start shutting and heavy lids and everything.
Was it coincidentally the time that you were talking as well, Dave? Are you sure it's not related?
No.
I've interrupted you, Dave, and more importantly, I've interrupted Jane while she was talking about daytime sleepiness. We think it's higher. We both suffer from daytime sleepiness. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect you're right. And, where are these research studies done that come up with these statistics? But I think daytime sleepiness is incredibly common in Parkinson's, and that there's mild forms or more severe forms. But a common symptom, people just say, I just persistently feel sleepy and tired all day. And then superimposed on that, there are these brief, sort of sudden episodes of just falling asleep that people cannot resist. So even when they think it's socially not appropriate to fall asleep, the overwhelming urge is just to fall asleep. There are these episodes called sleep attacks, which are pretty dangerous because you don't want to be driving or operating heavy machinery when you have a sleep attack. And this is something slightly different, where people are not feeling too sleepy and suddenly they just fall asleep without warning. That's not so common in Parkinson's. It can be brought on actually by dopamine agonist medications. So it's something that we always ask about when we've started medications like pramipexole, for example. But it is a real concern if someone's got that, because they can't drive whilst that's occurring.
So pramipexole, and in the UK, I think ropinirole is probably more prevalent.
Yeah.
The same category of drugs we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's right. So the dopamine agonists, the synthetic dopamine agonist drugs, or retigotine, the patch, they're all in that group, really. And not to overemphasize that, it's not a common thing, but it's different to the other episode I just mentioned, where people feel more and more sleepy and then they drop off. That's different. This is more like it just suddenly comes, unexpected.
It's a combination of factors, isn't it, that keep you awake at night. Sometimes restless legs with people and meds running out and stiffness all work against you to sleep.
You're absolutely right, Dave. And, restless legs syndrome can affect anybody in the population. Probably about 5 to 10% of adults have it. It goes up as we get older. But people with Parkinson's are far more common, probably 30, 40, 50%. And you're right, it's an awful, awful symptom of that kind of pulling, burning, uncomfortable feeling in the legs that either stops you going to sleep or wakes you up and then stops you going back to sleep. And of course, the relief is to get up and walk around, but that's no good if you want to be going to sleep.
Can I just ask about restless leg syndrome? Because I'm not sure everybody understands it. I see some people on social media when they've got what I think is, in my unscientific eyes, to be dyskinesia or perhaps even dystonia, and they're confusing that for restless leg syndrome.
Yeah.
I think you've started to give an explanation as to how that materializes, the burning sensation. Am I also right in saying that a sort of an itchy sensation, a scratch, if you feel the urge to scratch,
Yeah, you are.
that's also potentially?
Absolutely. So I think a good way to discriminate between restless leg syndrome and dyskinesia in the legs is that with restless leg syndrome, you get these kind of strong sensory symptoms. So it's usually the lower legs from the knees downwards. And the sensory feelings can vary from one person to another. So one person might say it's itchy, another person it's throbbing or aching, but ultimately it's an uncomfortable, usually growing, it sort of builds up sensory feeling. And then if you do move the legs, you get a bit of temporary relief. Whereas with dyskinesia, it's more like a dance-like persistent movement, and there isn't really particularly relief with that movement. So it's very much that perception of sensory disturbance that helps you pull those two apart. Of course, you could have both. But it is important to pull it apart, actually, because the treatment would be different. So, with restless leg syndrome, as well as checking for things like, are you low in iron? So, we know low iron can make restless leg syndrome worse. This is often why pregnant women first notice it when in pregnancy with low iron. So once you've sort of ruled those things out, things like caffeine, smoking, alcohol is also supposed to make it worse. But ultimately, if it's really disturbing someone's sleep, we'll often give them a low dose of a dopamine agonist medication. So those same medications, pramipexole, ropinirole, and so on. Whereas with dyskinesia, you wouldn't want to be giving more dopamine. That would make it worse. So ideally, you'd want to be reducing the dose down a little bit. So that it is important to separate the two.
And so you mentioned iron there. I've read somewhere that iron potentially doesn't agree with some Parkinson's meds. Is that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So levodopa containing medications, that's things like Madapar, Sinemet, Stalevo, you shouldn't take those with iron because the iron effectively stops the absorption or stops that medication working. Of course, some people need to have iron and Madapar, for example. And what we say in that situation is just allow at least an hour between those two medications. Because you're right, if you take the two together, you'll find, unfortunately, that Parkinson's medication won't work so well.
Throw into the mix urgency to pee overnight. You're in for a nightmare, aren't you?
We're having a great time talking about sleeping.
Unfortunately, it's a reality for a lot of people. I wake up on average about 3 times a night to pee, and there's very little I can do about it. I do try not to have too much liquid later on in the day, which is probably the best way you can try and manage it,
Yeah.
especially caffeine, tea, even herbal tea, I find just makes me want to pee through the night, alcohol. Is there anything else I can do for my nocturia short of taking another pill?
I think it sounds like you're doing all the right things already. And if the nocturia is related to the Parkinson's, it's really that autonomic nervous system disturbance that we know occurs in Parkinson's. So the bladder's contracting when it should be nice and relaxed. What I always do say, though, particularly to men, is let's just make sure that is definitely the Parkinson's, because we do know as men are getting older, the prostate gland also grows a little bit and pushes on that the urinary pipe, so that when people are trying to just relax and not have a pee, there's very much this frequency where people are wanting to have a pee often. So I think it's really important, and I'm sure many people have said this on your podcast, that we don't blame everything on Parkinson's. We try and just make sure it's not something else.
Dave, you wake up at night, often not for peeing, but you're adjusting your movement. You feel uncomfortable and you're turning over and things like that. Is that right?
Lower back pain and dystonia in my foot is big with me, so I'll be lying there and my back will be spasming a bit and I have to roll over to stop the spasming, which is quite annoying for my wife as well when I'm rolling around. We're thinking about getting 2 separate duvets on the bed, so I'm not pulling it off her all the time.
That's a very Swiss thing. The Swiss always have 2 duvets, you know. So you're just being very exotic there. I mean, you know, we know that with Parkinson's, a lot of the oral medications will be running a bit low overnight. And I think a really common symptom that people will report is some off symptoms overnight. So if that is not a standard muscle spasm, but it's actually a bit of dystonia because the medications are running low and you're getting off dystonia in your trunk. That can respond really nicely to just taking a little bit more levodopa before you go to bed. So something like a little bit of Madapar or Sinemet. And I quite often have that discussion with people that I see in clinic, and I say, look, it might be worth just trying it for 2 or 3 nights, see if it helps. Just a small dose, and you know, it often does the trick actually.
One of the challenges I have, if I take, so I'm on Madapar, that's my main drug. The later I take it, I find the more vivid dreams and nightmares I get. It's a catch-22, as is often the case in Parkinson's. So I kind of tend to sort of suffer during the night with the stiffness, the rigidity in my case, because if I just don't want the nightmares because they just can be quite terrifying. And nightmares and vivid dreams are quite common in Parkinson's, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you preempted what I was going to say there, that although it's worth trying it for the off symptoms, that can be the risk that it makes vivid dreams. If people experience hallucinations, it can make those worse or nightmares worse. So I think getting that dopamine at the sweet spot where it's stopping off symptoms but not causing these dream side effects is tricky. One way we sometimes do that is to give one of the sustained release, long acting dopamine agonists. So some people find that a once a day pramipexole, for example, just pushes them through the night and gives them enough dopamine so they're not going off, but they're not getting these really vivid dreams.
Yeah, I've tried slow release stuff before, and what I find is it's more like delayed release than slow release. And in the case of taking it overnight, what I sometimes find is that I wake up with dyskinesia.
Ah, right.
Because it just suddenly hits at one point in the night. But that's just my experience. I'm aware that others are quite happy with slow release. I find a lot of people don't know if they're on slow release, but if you've got things like pramipexole or ropinirole, normally if it's got things like XL or MR or CR or ER, I wish they would standardise this stuff, but normally that means slow release.
No, you're absolutely right. So it normally has a couple of letters after it, all of the ones you just said. And the other way to work it out is that you normally only take it once a day, whereas normally with pramipexole standard release, you'd be taking it 3 times a day.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the other group of drugs that we don't like to use too much, but they can help with the really vivid dreams, are the benzodiazepines. So the Valium group of drugs.
That's a sleeping pill, right?
It is really, and what that's doing is it's pushing into a deeper sleep, so that the dream sleep, you're actually not in the very deep sleep at all. And really those sleeping pills are pushing you into a deeper sleep. Now, we don't like to use them long term because they can be quite addictive, and certainly in older adults they increase the risk of falls and confusion in the day. But sometimes if people are having a really bad period of awful nightmares for a couple of weeks, it can just break that cycle and give a bit of relief. So they do have their place.
Am I right in thinking that REM sleep disorder has been linked with Alzheimer's?
Do you mean REM sleep behaviour disorder? Yeah, I'm not really aware of that actually, Dave, but one of the reasons we're really interested in REM sleep behaviour disorder is in the group where people only have that so-called isolated REM sleep behaviour disorder. And this is when people are acting their dreams out, often kicking, punching, shouting, and that's all they have. And people don't connect that with a risk of developing Parkinson's a decade or so later.
And it's quite a high risk of going on to develop Parkinson's, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's one of my particular areas of research interest, trying to find people with this condition. Because if we find people people, potentially we might be able to push back the onset of Parkinson's, or ask people in this group that are high risk to go into clinical trials and try and prevent Parkinson's. But you're right, the risk is about 70% of those people over a decade will go on to develop either Parkinson's or dementia with Lewy bodies. So the risks are quite high. We do know that people with Parkinson's that have this REM sleep behaviour disorder, so that's a different group. The group I've just described are what we call isolated at risk of developing Parkinson's. But people that have Parkinson's and REM sleep behaviour disorder, we do know they are at a bit higher risk of developing dementia in the future. So maybe that's where that question came from, Dave, that it is an association with Alzheimer's. Not really. Alzheimer's is a different pathology, but we do know Parkinson's, unfortunately, has a higher risk of dementia in the future. And if you have this particular dream disorder, the risk is a bit higher still. So, it's not a dead cert. People are going to go on and develop it, but we know there's these different subcategories of Parkinson's.
Is that also the same with people that see things that aren't there? Like, I was with a guy with Parkinson's who thought he saw a dog walking down the road. There wasn't a dog there, things like that.
Yeah.
Is that a similar thing?
Well, so visual hallucinations, really interesting topic. That is a whole new topic to talk about, and another fascinating area. But you're right. So people with Parkinson's are at higher risk of visual hallucinations. It tends to come on not in the early stages, a bit at the later stages. And if someone's on too much dopamine, they can also hallucinate. So one of the treatments for this is just to drop the dopamine dose down. But typically, we don't know why, people with Parkinson's classically see animals and people, and the hallucinations.
Spiders, I've heard a lot.
Yeah, spiders, little children in the room, animals. And interestingly, they're not often scary. It's just quite a neutral visual hallucination, and they don't make any sound. They don't talk to you. There's no extra sound with it. And what I say to people if that's happening is just reach out, like you're going to touch that object. And when you can't touch it, they often just disappear. Your brain tells you it's a trick of your mind. So in summary, you can have visual hallucinations as part of Parkinson's itself, or it can be a side effect of medications.
And just going back to RBD, right?
Yeah.
REM behavior disorder, which I always find strange because it's an acronym within an acronym, right? We do love our acronym in Parkinson's, but just so people understand how it materializes, you talked about lashing out. I saw a talk that you once gave one of your colleagues where they said if you look at cats and dogs particularly, they have this particular disorder, and often you'll see their leg or their paws just sort of twitching, just kind of, and I kind of have that same sort of sensation at night. I'm often just sort of twitching. A couple of times I've lashed out, which is kind of scary. My leg or my arm particularly is just sort of lashing out. Firstly, is that RBD? And secondly, it can be more dangerous than what I've just described.
Yeah, that's right. And it's really hard to say, are those couple of episodes you described definitely RBD, or is it just you'd slightly woken up and moved around? It's really hard to say. Normally, if it's RBD, which you're right, long acronym stands for rapid eye movement. That's the R bit, rapid eye movement sleep behaviour disorder. Normally, if it's RBD, you tend to get it recurrently. So you might get it once a week, you might get it once a month, but you wouldn't normally just have 2 episodes, which makes me think it might just have been a slight awakening and you've moved around.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. REM sleep behaviour disorder does have some risks to the person with it, as well as the person that's in the bed with them. Because when you're dreaming, when any of us are dreaming, we don't remember that unless we wake up in a dream. And what happens in REM sleep behaviour disorder is that when we're dreaming, even if we're dreaming of kicking a football, we don't move our legs. But in REM sleep behaviour disorder, that little switch which stops us moving our legs, which is actually at the bottom of the brainstem in the medulla, is a little bit faulty. So now when you dream about kicking a football, you can kick out. But of course, there's no football there. You're asleep. There's just somebody else in the bed and you've kicked them. Or you're next to the wall and you've kicked the wall. And I've had people come into my clinic and they've broken a toe. They've given it such a good whack, that wall, or they've really injured the bed partner. So to diagnose REM sleep behaviour disorder, you do actually need to have a sleep study overnight. So that might involve going into a sleep clinic or a hospital. They wire up your brain, they wire up other parts of your body. And what they're really measuring on the brain leads is, are you dreaming? And then they have some little wires on your chin and your arms to show, are the muscles contracting when they should be relaxed? Now, a lot of people just don't have access to those sorts of sleep clinics, or they do have access, but they're expensive. So what often happens is people say, well, it sounds like it, let's treat it as if it is. We just won't get the test. It's quite hard to get the test. And actually, here in Tasmania, we solved that by saying, hang on, the other way to do it is we have a home kit. And instead of bringing people in, we take the kit to them. So that's the kind of research study we've done here in Tasmania, because there's a lot of people that live rural, away from the big city. But anyway, what do we do about REM sleep behaviour disorder if someone thinks they have it? The two management sort of ways of managing it is there's the non-medicine way, which is all about keeping someone safe. So one important thing to do is move things off the bedside table that you are sharp, but you could injure yourself with. Just move the bedside table away from the bed so you don't bang your head into the corner. Some of the people, believe it or not, will get into a sleeping bag so that if they kick out, they're minimising the damage they can do to themselves or the bed partner. And other people will put pillows down the middle of the bed to protect the bed partner. So there's all sorts of just practical things you can do to keep people safe. Sometimes the other half says, I'm moving into another bed. This is just too much for me. So that does happen sometimes. And those
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, those are all the non-medicine approaches. And then in terms of medicine, there's two main drugs that are used. There's melatonin, which is really a natural hormone that we all have in our brains. And
so not a sleeping pill, right? Not in the conventional sense.
No, it's not.
It's not addictive.
No, it's a natural hormone that we all have. And as the day ticks on and the evening ticks on, the level of melatonin gradually goes up in the evening, and it's what makes us feel sleepy. And then in the morning, it's dropped down again. So all we're doing with melatonin is giving a little bit of a top up to a natural hormone. And we say to people, look, take that 2 or 3 hours before you were going to go to bed, just to really get a higher level of melatonin in your brain, help you to go into a deeper sleep. So that's one medicine that we use a lot of. And people tend to like to use that first because it is just a natural hormone. And then the other one really is the sleeping tablet that we mentioned before, clonazepam, which is one of these benzodiazepine, Valium-related drugs. Has a few problems the next day. People can feel a bit hungover, a bit tired, but it can work in some people to push them into a deeper sleep. And I've mentioned these kind of depths of sleep a few times. I probably should just explain that there's kind of 4 main stages to sleep. So when we fall asleep, we're in stage 1, just a light sleep. So a little noise could wake us up. And then as the night goes on, we go into stage 2, a bit deeper. Stage 3 is the deepest sleep, and that's very restorative sleep. It helps us feel awake and happy the next day. So we need to get that stage 3 sleep. And then we move into rapid eye movement sleep. This is when we're dreaming, and that's quite a light sleep again. And that cycling between progressively deeper sleep and then into dream sleep occurs about every 90 minutes as the night goes on. And so over a good night's sleep, we might cycle through that about 4 or 5 times. And it's in that rapid eye movement sleep, the dream sleep, where these dream enactment behaviours can occur if somebody has rapid eye movement behaviour disorder. I should say only about half of people with Parkinson's do have that rapid eye movement sleep disorder, so not all. And sometimes it's really mild. It doesn't really cause too many problems at all.
Dave, you've fallen out of bed, haven't you?
I have done before, yeah. Just rolled out of bed, yeah, but only once. But it's quite frightening when you wake up.
Yeah.
You wonder what's going on. You might have sworn at someone or kicked out. It's not a nice thing. I wonder, people with Parkinson's think we take enough meds. Are there any non-pharmaceutical interventions you can use to get over this?
It's a good question. I think, I think we generally talk about sleep hygiene, and what we mean by that is keeping a regular rhythm, if you will, to your bedtime. So being pretty strict about no screens in the bedroom, no exercise after 8 p.m, allowing the room to be dark and quiet, and really trying to maximize the chance of going into that deeper sleep. Because when you're in the deeper sleep, you're not dreaming, you're not having any dream enactment behaviors. Whereas when you're in the light dream sleep, this is when all the movements are happening. So I think anything that allows you to really get into a good, deep, restful sleep. We do know that getting outside in the daytime, getting lots of light, really triggers good hormones to our brain, which pushes us into this deeper sleep. And even better, getting outside, lots of light, and exercise in the daytime. But interestingly, if you exercise too late, it sort of has the opposite effect, because you can get a bit of a dopamine boost. So the timing's quite important.
Where do you stand on daytime naps?
So daytime naps are interesting, and a lot of people, if they've had a terrible night's sleep, of course they just want to have a nap to feel better again. And we've gone actually from saying to people, don't have a nap, to actually saying, okay, you might need a nap to get you through the next day. But there's this phrase that we now use, which is called, you'll enjoy this, prescribed napping. And what we mean by this... What we mean by this is not actually us doctors prescribing it, but people with Parkinson's saying, I'm going to prescribe myself, or basically allow myself, one nap today. And you time it to be just after lunch. And the reason is that we know after lunch, people naturally feel sleepy. So it's a good time to go into that deep restorative sleep. And what we now know is if you have a nap about then, after lunchtime, and it's about 30 to 45 minutes, that is deep enough sleep to really get that restorative sleep where you feel better afterwards. It gives you more energy, probably for about 6 to 8 hours afterwards. So what we're now saying to people is, okay, if you need a nap, that's the perfect time to have the nap. Don't have the nap at 5 in the evening. That's going to keep you up all night. So this prescribed napping is really saying time it, not only in terms of the time of day, but the duration. If you have about a 10-minute nap, you won't go into a deep enough sleep. Although it can just make you feel better for an hour or two, you're not going to get a good 6 hours of restorative, the feel-good mood and thinking and energy that you get from that deeper sleep. So that's actually something quite helpful. And I think when I've said that to people in clinic, they feel a bit relieved, because they're like, I need my nap, but now I know when to have it.
You prescribe yourself, don't you, Dave, a daily nap?
Yeah, like half an hour in the afternoon, just after lunch. Yeah, perfect. And it just helps. I think sleep is the Swiss Army knife to life, really. Get your sleep sorted out, you can sort out anything, So.
I really agree with you, Dave. Yeah, and I think remembering having 3 babies and kids, and it's just, you feel horrendous when you've been up all night with them. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think sleep often has such an overhang to how everything else functions the next day. There is this other problem that can occur in Parkinson's, which is all to do with the circadian rhythm. And, by circadian rhythm, that's when your body feels awake in the day and asleep at night. That's the way it should be. But we know what happens in Parkinson's in some people is it all starts to shift forwards. So people get sleepy in the mid-afternoon or very early evening. They go to bed at that time, and then they wake up 2, 3 in the morning, and that's it. They're awake then. That's when the day is starting. And that can actually become really problematic if it keeps tracking forward. And I've seen some people in clinic where they've almost become nocturnal. They're up all night and asleep all day. And then that's just really hard for all sorts of reasons, but often leaves people really socially disconnected. So I think this getting the circadian rhythm a bit more regulated is really important. And when I hear people saying it's starting to track forward, I'm trying to nip that in the bud, and that's when I really am saying keep active in the day, get out, and at night make sure everything's really dark, and frankly just don't get up at 2 in the morning. Allow your body to rest and stay in that darker environment.
And don't pick up your phone, ideally, or switch the TV on.
I know it's tempting, isn't it? But you're absolutely right. Don't do that. And really, the advice would be if you're waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, obviously, if you need to go to the toilet or whatever, do that. But if you're just waking up, allow yourself to lie in bed for probably 30 minutes, because it can take that long to go back into the sleepy period where you can actually fall asleep.
I can understand what you're saying, because I'm going to bed earlier and earlier, and I'm waking up earlier and earlier. And it's a real shift, because I never used to be like that. 7, 8 p.m, I'm just ready for bed, which is a bit disruptive. Helen's getting home from work and wants to spend some time together, and I'm ready for bed.
Yeah.
It's really quite disruptive. All this stuff is quite disruptive on home life and partners, particularly.
Of course. And that's the Parkinson's, one of those non-motor symptoms. It's really altering that, what we take for granted, that circadian rhythm of I'm awake in the day and I'm tired at night. And I think if that is happening and it is starting to shift forward, I think, again, that really sort of purposeful, it's not easy, but getting physically outside and moving is very helpful. Just shifting it back, even if it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes back. And it's just sort of almost pushing that rhythm back. But I think if it's been shifting forward for a few months, it's going to take a few months to go back as well. But just sometimes recognising it's part of the Parkinson's.
Yeah, and also I think you're alluding to it there, be forgiving of yourself. I think that's quite key, because there's so many things that are working against you sometimes.
Yeah, you're so right there. And I think sometimes when I've just named it to people and said, that is part of the Parkinson's, there's a look of relief of like, I thought I was doing something wrong. And it's like, gosh, no, this is hard. This is really hard. It's like being jet lagged, where your body is telling you to do something and you're trying to fight it. That's really hard.
Yeah, it's the analogy I always use, jet lag. That's exactly what it's like. If you're non-Parky and you're listening to this, living permanently in jet lag is the closest way I can describe what it feels like.
I think for people without Parkinson's, they might have a couple of bad nights' sleep. They feel terrible, but often then it'll go back to normal. And I think people with Parkinson's, it's a real challenge, because this can just go on for months and years and become quite a predominant part of the Parkinson's. I think on a positive note, and I know it is tough when people are just relentlessly having bad night's sleep, I think as the medical profession, we've become much better at recognising this as part of Parkinson's. And I think much better and more educated at having discussions about, well, what can we do about it? And I think, as we've just shown in our discussion, what you've got to do is tease out, well, what's the cause of the poor sleep? And if you don't know the cause, and I don't mean just Parkinson's, is it a problem getting to sleep or waking up or bladder or whatever? And I think by teasing that out through a good history, then you can really start to tackle that. And I think, again, on a positive note, I've seen many, many people come to my neurology clinic really suffering with terrible sleep. But I've also seen them come back 6 months later and say, gosh, I'm like a new man or a new woman. I got that sorted because we've tackled the issue. So I do think there's a positive element to this.
For me, if the stars align and I manage to get a good night's sleep, even now, 12 years after my diagnosis, I can wake up and almost forget that I have Parkinson's. It doesn't last for very long, but that's how impactful it is. And go back to something you said earlier, my best night's sleep are invariably the days that I do exercise and play tennis with Dave, because the quality of my sleep then is, I'm just literally like, I'm charging my batteries that night. I feel so much better. My symptoms are less pronounced the next day. I'm more likely to be more alert cognitively, more mobile, more likely to eat better as well, and more likely to exercise. And it's all linked, isn't it?
It really is. You're absolutely right. And going back to that deep sleep that I mentioned before, what we call stage 3 sleep, We know that when people are in this deep sleep, which I think is what you're describing there, Kuhan, where you feel really restored the next day, your energy's better, your alertness, your mood and so on is so much better after you've had this deep sleep. That's coming from the front of the brain, those deep sleep waves, if you will. And of course, the front of the brain is where other problems with Parkinson's can occur, such as apathy or low mood, or problems with that brain fog where the thoughts are a bit slower. So exactly where that deep wave sleep is exactly where we want it to be, that front of the brain. So I think what you've described makes perfect sense. And I think going back to what we were talking about before, those lifestyle changes of trying, despite the challenges, of trying to do some exercise in bright daylight and looking after that bit of what we call sleep hygiene before bed, so switching the lights down, keeping it quiet. I think that combination of busy in the day, quiet at night is the best way of getting into that deep sleep.
Just before we go, who are the people that are really thriving with Parkinson's? What was the secret to a good life with Parkinson's, from your experience of seeing loads of people with Parkinson's over the years?
Yeah, I think there is a theme. I think it is around social connection, ideally in person with other people, be that friends, the community, or recognizing not everyone can do that and it might be more of an online. But I think connection with other people is so good cognitively, mood, and so on. I've mentioned exercise a few times, but it really is the magic pill, isn't it? If only we could bottle that. And I very much now talk about movement or exercise is medicine. So I think people that are able to put exercise into the day and social connection. But I think the other thing is around keeping a role, keeping something that says, I am contributing, I am of value, because I think Parkinson's can take away so much from people. And I think really enforcing that can happen, but people still have so much value, so much to offer. And I think really maximising that. And often people will say to me, I'm going to stop working because of Parkinson's. And I say, do you have to? Could you maybe just reduce your hours but keep going? Because I do see that people that keep working, or it might not even be paid employment, it might be a role looking after the grandchildren or something. But I think one of the worst things people can do is hide away. Then I really do see people go downhill more quickly in terms of the mood and the movements. So I guess what we're talking about there is kind of lifestyle changes, isn't it? But also just really advocating for people with Parkinson's and saying, please don't stop doing everything. Keep going.
Yeah, exactly. Don't lose your identity to this condition, because that is a slippery slope. I'd agree. And one last question from me on the subject of sleep, or even more generally about Parkinson's. Have you heard from a patient of a magic trick or a magic hack that helps their sleep or their daily life with Parkinson's that you thought, oh, that's interesting, and that maybe you've recommended to others or you want to share here?
Yeah, I do actually. I'm a great believer in listening to my patients. And I think I was at medical school and someone said, if you listen hard enough to your patients, they will tell you the answer. And that was more around diagnosis. Just let people talk and they'll tell you what they've got, basically. But I do think it's true with so many neurological conditions that listen to what people are saying, because they are telling you what works for them, and what works for them could well work for the next person. So that I kind of think about two people. There was somebody I saw who had a really bad tremor with Parkinson's in her hand. And she showed me this trick that she did, which was to visualize her hand was on top of a wave, and the wave of water was coming into the beach. And she had really marked tremor as she was telling me this. And then she did this visualization trick, and it went completely steady. It almost looked magical. And I said, how are you doing that? And she just said, it's just something I've focused on. It's something that I'm able to do, which is really handy. It won't last, beyond a few minutes, but it can give me stability when I need it. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. And I've since met, who I think was on your show actually, Barbara Salzberg-Matthews.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's got a similar trick.
Who's a professional mime artist, and she seemed to be telling me the same thing. But this lady that I'd had in clinic, she didn't know any of that. It was just something she'd worked out. And I thought that's really interesting that she didn't know the theory, but it worked for her. And then there's another man I think of who was a carpenter, actually. Here in Tasmania, there's a lot of carpenters because there's a lot of trees. Forestry is big industry. And again, he was somebody with a terrible tremor, and we tried all sorts of medications, and he didn't want to have surgery, and he was sort of left with this really bad tremor. And as a carpenter, that was going to destroy his career, frankly. And he just found this amazing technique where he said, if I work quicker, the tremor goes away. And he just became this really fast carpenter. And he showed me his work. It was phenomenal. He said, I've just noticed if I go slow, which is kind of the Parkinson's is making me go slow, the tremor gets really bad. But if I go really quick, hammering nails in and cutting and everything, I can manage to get over it. And I can't quite work out the explanation for that, but it's interesting, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
From a research perspective, it'd be good to dive into that. Something similar for me is just distract myself. If I distract myself with something like a TV show or a book or an engaging chat like this, I tend to forget my symptoms. They might still be there, but they don't preoccupy me in the same way as if I wasn't doing anything and just sitting there and focusing on the symptoms, focus on something else. Just distraction can be a very effective technique. And this conversation has been a prime example. I've really enjoyed it, Jane. Thank you so much for your time.
Really good. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've loved talking to you both.
The wonderful Professor Jane Alty from Tasmania University makes a complex subject sound very, very simple, doesn't she?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to sleep in Parkinson's, and hopefully that gave you a flavour of all the different challenges that we face and some explanation of what's going on and perhaps some tips as to how to deal with it. Yeah, I thought she gave a great explanation, and I thought she's a good listener, which sounds a bit like we should take for granted, but I've noticed neurologists that perhaps further afield from the main centres like Queen Square or perhaps in more rural territories, for example, tend to be better listeners, I find. I'm generalising completely here, and also are more advocates for holistic care, use of technology and so on, maybe because they have to be, because they don't have the resources that a dedicated centre like Cambridge or Queen Square in London has. But it's slightly different mentality. This sort of younger breed of neurologists, the Baz Blooms of the world that are kind of have done all the textbook stuff, but also are actually listening to patients, and you can kind of see that reflected, right?
Showed the human side, really.
It showed the human side, exactly. And the tips that she had received from patients that she was passing on was quite interesting as well.
I like the hand in the
wave.
wave.
It does work, actually. We tried that when we were playing pool with Ellie, right? Yeah. It does work. I didn't know a lot about restless leg syndrome, did you?
No, I knew nothing about it. I don't particularly get it, but I get dystonia in my leg, so my leg often cramps up at night, which is hard. And the right side of my back gets really, really cramped as well. So
yeah, well, I was talking to her about my itchy calves.
What were you going to say?
But I'm pretty sure that's some sort of restless leg syndrome. And restless leg syndrome, I didn't realise is actually a condition in its own right, and there's also a movement disorder. So it's all part of the wider family of movement disorders. So there is some link there. And you can have restless leg syndrome without Parkinson's, of course. And if you have restless leg syndrome, you're more likely to go on to get Parkinson's, is the way that I heard that. But yeah, I get very itchy calves at night. And Helen gets that itchy, sensory feeling, uncomfortable feeling in her legs. It's interesting that it's actually quite common in the wider population and more common in women.
Maybe you've got bed bugs.
Maybe we're just allergic to each other. Can I just say, Dave, on a serious note, we heard there about the challenges with partners, and I took part in a video for a pharmaceutical company where they had a few of us parkies talking about our sleep challenges. And I got quite emotional because I was hearing a couple talking about how they had to go their separate ways at night because they had to sleep in separate bedrooms. I'm not at that stage. You're not at that stage, are you?
No, my wife threatened me with separate duvets.
Why separate duvets in your case?
Just because I move a bit and pull. I've got those temple mattresses, so I don't move Carolyn. If I move, she doesn't move because it's separate, you know.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say because of body temperature, because I'm always really hot and Helen's always really cold. So maybe we need separate duvets to manage that. But I don't know about you, but I'm dreading the day when we have to maybe potentially have separate bedrooms and I'm not. I really
feel quite lonely.
Yeah. But you know, it's a reality in Parkinson, unfortunately, and not least for people acting out in their dreams and for literally safety, right? I mean, I've lashed out a few times at night, and a couple of occasions it's been quite close with me almost hitting Helen, I should say.
Yeah.
I'd never forgive myself if that happens.
No.
It's a complex topic, and it's also just brings home the human and home impact of Parkinson's and impact on partners. Just talking about impact on partners, Dave, if I can just digress for a minute. This morning, me and Helen left in the morning together, which is quite unusual for us, at like 8 o'clock in the morning, battling our way through cyclists and school kids on their phone, not looking up. But that aside, I made her very late this morning because I was very slow and she was helping me get ready. And I had some admin tasks to do, which I'm really bad at these days. So she was helping me with that. And I made her really late. And she makes the coffee and the breakfast in the morning because, quite frankly, I can't do it. And I made her so late, I saw as we were leaving in the fridge, she had actually left her porridge. And so she had to skip breakfast because of me. And I felt terrible. I felt absolutely terrible. That sort of sacrifices that partners have to make. And you see that through the story of sleep, but you also see it through the day as well. It's a toll, isn't it?
I wonder if you could Deliveroo or something in your office. That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it? Deliveroo some porridge or something.
Yes.
Nice lunch for because you missed breakfast. That'd be nice, romantic.
I've never thought of porridge being delivered as romantic, but...
Well, you get something else. Nice favourite food delivered or some flowers or something.
Yes. She did make a point to me the other day that I've never bought her flowers.
You bought some... You're out with me.
That was the first time. That's the first time, exactly. I've got evidence now. I bought some nice sunflowers. Exactly. You bought some as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I've always bought flowers for my wife.
Yes. Always. Because you're always in trouble, that's why.
It's true, true.
What else are we talking about?
I think it's time for a bit of this.
What's that, Dave?
People with Parkinson's do amazing
Do we have some amazing people doing amazing things,
We
Dave?
do have some amazing people doing amazing things.
Go on, hit it.
It's never easy to go public about your Parkinson's, so congratulations to AD Boothroyd, for England under 21 and former Watford coach, telling his story about being a Parky. 3 years he's had it. We had the pleasure of meeting him, didn't we, before he came out?
We did. Let's hear a little clip from him first.
It's been a burden. It's 3 years it's taken me to come to this position, and as I said earlier, you know, I've a lot of well wishers, a lot of people that are friends of mine that, you know, are you all right, Ed? Are you feeling okay? And having to carry that around with you, it's tough, and it is a bit like my life's been on hold. For all of us, really, for my family, for my kids. And people have just wanted to be helpful, and that's great. You know, I don't want to wallow, don't want pity. What I want is to get back on the pitch, or wherever it is I end up doing, whatever it is that I do. But I won't let this define me.
We had the pleasure of meeting AD and his lovely wife Emma last month now, and I don't know what it is about people from Yorkshire, but you all seem to be really nice gentlemen and really nice guy. Talking of Yorkshire, I did know he grew up 10 miles away from that paraquat factory, so I'm just saying, if some researchers want to look into this, there seems to be a lot of people in that part of the world that are being diagnosed, so I'm putting two and two together myself, and in the hope that somebody can actually investigate this, because you didn't grow up too far from there, nor did he. But really nice guy, really nice couple. Unfortunately, it's a story that we've heard over and over again, isn't it, Dave?
People don't want to put an incendiary device under the career, do they? They don't want to go public about it. But he was in a position where, you know, he's had a successful career. He can be a number two with someone, or assistant manager, or mentor people. He's still got a lot of life in him, you know.
Absolutely.
I encourage the football world to tap his brains, you know, because he's a brilliant guy, great coach. He could do a lot of good for a lot of clubs.
Yeah, and the sort of skills he has are transferable elsewhere as well.
Yeah,
so
business, yeah.
Hopefully he took some comfort from our words from previous episodes, and it was nice to have a chat with him. Must have brought back a few memories for you, right? Coming out.
Yeah, it did. I find it still tricky talking about my diagnosis. You know, even after all these years, 14 years, it's still I still get quite emotional talking about it.
Yeah.
But it's life, isn't it? You can't change it. It's happened. So I just try and crack on and do what I can. You know.
There's two things he said to us that really stuck in my mind, and I've heard this again. It's sometimes I feel like I'm watching the same movie over and over again, but each time with a different actor, because it's a very common story about.
It's a good line, yeah.
It's that protracted diagnosis, the uncertainty, the cruelty of the words, that how it was delivered, the lack of information, the uncertainty. Then at some point, something dawns on you, and the penny drops, and you get to some sort of acceptance, and then you're kind of ready. And everyone has, as you've said before, everyone has their own timeline, their own journey, right? There's no right and wrong in terms of when to come out. There's no handbook for this.
You know when you feel ready to come out.
Yeah.
And Aidy was definitely in that position where he wasn't for 3 years, and now he is, so it's great.
It is, and he did it in a wonderful way for the wider community, and hopefully it will raise awareness with his profile. The way he described it to us, he felt like he was lying to people. And I felt like that very much so as well when I was hiding my condition for many years. You felt like you're lying to particularly your loved ones, people that are close to you, or people that are around you. I never told people at work, for example, that I had Parkinson's. I managed to complete 8 years from my diagnosis all the way through, and I didn't tell a soul. And I don't know, you feel like you're cheating a little bit. I think that was part of his motivation, and also. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if he was anything like me, I got to the point where I couldn't hide it any longer. And when I did tell people, it was like a weight was lifted. Obviously not in a public way, in the way that you guys did, which must have had a whole new layer of emotion, right? But I felt a lot of relief. How did you feel the day? Because you had an interview with a newspaper, right?
I wrote an article in the Daily Mail.
Right.
So it went everywhere, you know, it was everywhere.
The moment they hit, was it print in those days?
No, it was just
online.
Online, yeah.
So you got reaction immediately?
With the Daily Mail website, the more hits the story gets, the higher it goes up the...
Yeah.
And it got to number 2, you know.
And do people comment on the story?
Yeah.
Were you sitting there hitting refresh and reading all the comments?
I just sat down, I didn't want to look at anything.
Yeah, of course.
My phone was going mad. I texted everyone the night before that I knew who I thought should let know before. Just said, hi, it's David.
Yeah.
Just want to tell you, I'm diagnosed with Parkinson. I'm doing fine. The article coming out tomorrow. You know, if you want to read more about it, but you know, don't worry about me. I'm doing okay. And that was we're going to do an episode on coming out because we are a voice message from a lady who wants to come out on the show, which would be quite interesting.
Yes, we did have an episode a while back called "Telling People You Have Parkinson's." It was one of our more listened to episodes, which probably tells the story in itself. I think there's a lot of people in this boat. I always quote that figure, 37% of people hide their condition, 62% of young onset people hide their condition. But I never go on to quote the additional stat that 3 out of 4 of them don't regret taking the journey that they did and hiding it. So there's no right and wrong here. Follow your own path, you know. If it's working for you, it's working for you. I don't have a regret thinking back now, keeping my condition a secret for 6, 7, 8 years. Do you?
No, it's what's right for you. I keep saying
exactly.
Whatever's right for you work. There's no hard and fast way to do it. Just whatever feels right, do it, you know.
Exactly. But just know that we know what the journey is like, and we both felt relieved afterwards, and you'll get a lot of love and support, and we send our best wishes to Aidy, Emma and his kids, and thinking of you, and
when you're ready to come on the podcast, we'd love to have you on.
Yes, we'd love to continue our chat on air.
People with Parkinson's do amazing
that was quite possibly our longest segment of people do amazing things, Ray.
Well done, the wonderful Harvey Silkowitz. Harvey was a contestant on the American game show Jeopardy. Despite having Parkinson's for 5 years, he completely smashed the game, winning over $31,000.
And in 2019, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Oh, wow.
But I continued chasing the dream, and now here I am.
Look at that. Congratulations.
I wouldn't recommend that as a preparation strategy for doing well on the show. But after living with Parkinson's for 5.5 years, it's no longer just about wanting to do well for myself. I would like to give hope and inspiration to the people who are living with chronic illnesses.
Good man.
Good man. Also a common story people want to give back eventually as well. Well done. Very public again. And it's all good for the cause. The more voices that we hear, the better it is for the overall cause.
People with Parkinson's do amazing things.
Friend of the show, Johnny Atchison, a doctor with Parkinson's, is going to release a book this summer. When Your Neurons Dance will be published by Routledge Books. They're hitting some good bookstores and some bad ones as well, very soon.
Excellent. What's it called? When Neurons Dance?
When Your Neurons Dance. Yeah.
Oh, right. Very good. I'll look forward to that read.
That is life
He's
story,
got a very interesting story. Yeah, I'd love to give that a read.
People with Parkinson's do amazing things.
Matt Ross, a DJ with Parkinson's, reckons spinning the wheels of steel helps him with his symptoms. He says it helps fine motor skills, scratching, cueing tracks, adjusting faders, turning knobs, helps dexterity and control. A DJ doesn't just stand still, moving to the rhythm of the beat, helps with his dance moves as well. I've got this for you.
Is this last night a DJ may have saved my life?
There's not a problem that I can't fix, because I can do it in the mix. If your Parkies gives you trouble, just a DJ and a double, and don't let it trouble your brain, because away goes Parkies down the drain. Yes, away goes Parkies down the drain.
What is it? What's the line?
Away goes Parkies down the drain.
The way.
Away goes Parkies down the drain.
Let's do that again. Let me join in. Everyone join in. There's thousands of people now doing a virtual karaoke.
There's not a problem that I can't fix, because I can do it in the mix. If your Parkies gives you trouble, just a DJ and the double, and you don't let it trouble your brain, because away goes Parkies down the drain. Yes, away goes Parkies down the drain.
How did you come up with that?
Just easy. Just
Easy.
You're a naturally gifted musical artist, it's fine.
Yeah, well...
We've got that, finally, hang on.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, not that, not that.
People with Parkinson's do amazing things.
Finally, Canadian artist Barbara Salzberg Matthews has been creating some meat masterpieces, turning ham and salami into pictures of celebrities. It was all going so well until a lump of Donald Trump was put in a sandwich by her husband. Thought Trump should meet.
Let's not get political here, but it's hard not to make a joke out of that, isn't it?
If you're doing something amazing, drop us a line. Two Parks in a Pod is the website.
twoparksinapod.com is the website. If you want to message us, you can either message us there or actually preferably by email, particularly if you want to send us a voice note at hello@twoparkiesinapod.com. You can find us on social media under the hashtag and handle 2parkiesinapod. And also, one request, if I may. The majority of you listening without subscribing, could you subscribe to us? Because it really helps us out and you'll be alerted of new episodes.
It's very exciting when you get a new episode drop.
It is.
We get excited.
I was saying to Dave, like, as soon as we hit publish, and I see the alerts coming up, I was like, oh, new episode, the 2 Parkies in a Pod. I'm quite excited. Sit there, listen to it. But please do hit the subscribe button, and if you feel inclined, rate and review us as well. That also helps us out.
And go for a walk in the spring sunshine.
Get yourself out, enjoy the sunshine.
Sniff some flowers. Enjoy yourself. Walk the dog.
Yes.
Do it, be active.
Go out and
Get
have
out
fun.
there.
Yes.
We're out of here. Bye.
Yay.